Hello, everyone. I was just replying to Rick on the comment stream. Welcome to our eighth meetup since the summer with the Angular London meetup. We've been running this series of online meetups to try and give us all some way of getting back in touch with each other and talking about Angular. And this week we've got a really exciting talk from Gerard. I'm sure if you've spent any time in the Angular community in London, you'll have come across Gerard at some point. He's been all over the place. He used to run a thing called Angular Zones, I think it was called, Gerard, wasn't it?
Yes.
And you also bring your own project and lots of other stuff. At the moment, I think you're working at Amazon.
Yes.
And you're going to be giving us a talk about GraphQL and how you can link that up with Angular. Is that about right?
Yeah, more or less. It's going to be with a lot of different pieces. One of them is offline first. Then I'll move into PWAs and GraphQL. It will be also in the mix. Angular, of course. I mean, how long we have? Maybe I went a little bit crazy, but I have content.
Excellent. If you've got plenty of content, then we should probably let you get on with it. But
Okay.
Thank you very much. This is a topic that's been asked for a lot from our members, so hopefully it will give them lots to think about. Don't forget, everyone, that you can ask Gerard questions. We'll collect them up and ask them to him at the end when he's finished his talk. But just post them in the comments either on YouTube or Facebook, and it'd be great to hear from you. And right at the very end, after we finish the Q&A, we'll scoot across to a Zoom, which Josh has just put up on the screen for us there. I think we'll put a link to that in the comments as well, so you can go to it at the end and do a bit of networking. Anyway, without further ado, I'll hand over to Gerard, and I'll let you get on with it. Thanks very much again.
Okay, thanks a lot. So let's see let's see how we are doing, if we can get the slides on. And yeah, well, this is as always, I like to spend some time in my intro slide. I mean, this is using some animations and bright colors just to wake you up a little bit. So, well, the topic for today is going to be offline first, and that's probably the main topic. We are going to also throw some GraphQL and Amplify DataStore, which will help us create that offline first experience. So let's go for a little intro. And first, I'll go with with my name. I mean, I'm originally from Barcelona, so it's a little bit difficult for everyone to pronounce it well. And the right pronunciation is Gerard Sans, and this is Catalan. But if you cannot pronounce it like that, you can call me Gerard, which is the English version. I work as a developer advocate for Amazon Web Services, and you can see here with some pictures with Percy and this developer T-shirt that I made. I don't know why, to have some fun. I've been talking and doing public speaking for, I think, at least 6 years now. And you can see that I've been all over the place, not so much excited now that we cannot move, much outside the house. But yeah, really excited to be here talking at the London meetup. So let's go with the topic, and I think the main question that I would like you to make yourself is, what is offline first? And probably as a web developer, this is not a question that you do yourself that much. So what would involve to get one of your web apps and make it online first? And this will be the beginning, the first topic that I want to cover. Well, one of the first things that you encounter when you go offline is the dinosaur, isn't it? And this is a game that you can play in Chrome, and you just need to press the space bar, and you can play these cactuses, in the desert from hell game. But of course, if you have a nice web app and you don't want your customers or your users to be playing a game instead of using your app. So how we can improve that? Well, the idea is that I'm going to cover what are the main requirements for offline first, for web. And the first thing is, of course, avoiding the dinosaur. That would be the first, achievement that you need to go through. Then the next one will be to provide a great user experience, and of course you can stop just by showing some kind of a message saying that, okay, your app is offline, or you are currently offline, and the app is not going to work for you. But you can do much better than that. And the way we approach this when building an offline first app is by adding some what I call native-like features. And these will be some features that will give you the experience that you get usually from mobile native apps. One other thing that you may consider is, okay, so I have my web app. Now I have some extra features that will allow me to work offline. But maybe your first concern would be how I'm going to deal with user data. So the next thing that you must take care is having a reliable storage. How are you going to store your data while you are offline? And then the next thing, how are you going to share, and how are you going to be synchronizing this data that was created offline and being put, on your data store? So we are going to cover all of these by looking into progressive web apps and how they will help us to achieve these goals. So this is pretty much the intro, and usually when I go through a milestone, I like to give you, yourself a pat in the back. You're doing great. So we are going to move to the next section, kind of a break between topics, and the next big topic will be progressive web apps. And if you haven't heard about progressive web apps, which I doubt it at this point because they have been around for a few years, I think a good way to look into it is look into the core requirements. And the first one is using a secure transport. And this would involve HTTPS. And the reason behind this is that we are going to use some assets. We're going to install some assets. It will be some JavaScript. It will be also the user data. And we want to make sure that this is protected. So that would be the first thing that we want to make sure it's available. So any time that you want to install a PWA, you need to make sure that it's hosted in a HTTPS hosting site. So that would be the first requirement. We are going to achieve that by using AWS Amplify. The next thing that you will need is a service worker. And the service worker will allow us to basically be able to work offline and transition to online without having to do any interaction with the app. So the service worker will make this happen. And I'm going to show you how that works. The next thing that we will be looking into is the web app manifest. And the web app manifest will let us customize the user experience for different devices. And because PWAs can look more like native apps, this will be specifically targeting different operative systems and different devices. So for each device, we will be able to change how the user experience looks like. So that's probably something exciting, which is not that easy to achieve while you are being all the time in the browser. So we will be able to look at how to use your web apps in a desktop environment or also in mobile. So how that looks as the service worker goes offline. Well, this is a diagram that I'm trying to explain what will be the behavior and the role of the browser, the service worker, and the network. And basically, if we go offline and we try to refresh, there will be some requests. And here I'm just making the app and also some asset. And then the service worker will sit between the browser and the network, and it will look into this request, and it will do a thing that is really clever, which will be to look into the cache that is available to the browser and look for this request. If there's a match, it will send those to the browser. So for the browser, it will exactly receive the assets and files as if it was online. So basically, it's just making the browser believe that it's online with the assets that we use when we install the service worker. So this is how the magic works, and usually the people get funny reactions, and usually this is the reactions I get, like, oh wow, I can run offline and just by using the service worker, which is quite awesome. Now I want to talk to you about AWS Amplify, and this will help us to do the storage in our local browser, and also be able to do the synchronizing very simply. So here I'm going to talk also about full stack serverless, and this is kind of a new concept. If you have heard about serverless, this is usually a concept that puts you on the back end. But now with tools like AWS Amplify, you can actually build your app from the client on the front end up to the back end in the cloud. So this is kind of a new approach, and this technology will bridge the classic front end and back end. So both back end developers and front end developers will be able to develop this full stack, what we call full stack serverless apps. These are all of the platforms that AWS Amplify supports. So you can see the support for React, obviously Angular, Vue, JavaScript. There's also support for Next.js, and also some native platforms like Android and iOS. There's also a version in preview of Flutter, so you can play with all of these if you want today. Of course, there's also a version for Ionic, and that's something that you can try without any doubt. So how AWS Amplify looks behind the scenes? Well, we have different pieces working together, and the first one is the Amplify framework, and this is a set of libraries that you can use to build your front-end site or your client. There's also a set of developer tools that will help you develop these full stack serverless apps, and this will connect you or give you the start configuration for cloud services, and that will be all made by the Amplify CLI. And if you are familiar with the Angular CLI, this is very much the same idea. So by running some simple commands, you will be able to set up different features for your application. Let's look into the Amplify framework. This is an open source set of libraries that we can use, and we use a categories-based approach, and I will introduce you all of the different categories that you can use, and this will usually provide you a specific feature that you can then build your app on. This is an opinion, and you must be familiar. I mean, this is something that normally developers, when looking into Angular, they say that Angular is an opinionated framework. I think this is also applying to Amplify framework. Basically, what happens is when you use Amplify, if you are a seasoned AWS developer, you may agree or disagree with some of the opinions from the framework. And in that case, you can always go and change the defaults. And this is the next point. So even if you don't agree completely with some of the settings that Amplify framework uses to set your apps, there's always something that you can do to customize that experience. Of course, for beginners, this will usually be enough, but there's also this extensibility here. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the developer tools. For developer tools, we will be looking into Amplify CLI, and this will allow us to create and manage AWS services in the cloud. We have support for multiple environments. So usually when you are working in your organization, you may have different environments, and we are talking about dev, staging, Q&A, or production. So you can replicate those environments while working with Amplify. There's also support for mocks and local testing. And this is interesting because when working in the cloud, you may think that you always need to release in the cloud to be able to test. But there are few pieces that can be used locally, and that will speed up your developer cycle. There's also contributions from the community, and there's a plugin architecture. We have 3 at the moment. So there's a video streaming architecture that you can plug into your app. There's also access to the docs. And this is also a recent addition, time to live, that you can add in your GraphQL schema. So you can define, when you remove record, how long it will live in the database. All right, so this is quite a lot. What I want to show you now is how it looks while development. So Amplify CLI has mainly these 4 different commands. The first one will be to set up your project, and that will be always when you create a new app. So that will be Amplify init. And this will set up your AWS account with your project. The next thing that you will use is Amplify add, and then you will choose one of the categories. And I'm going to show you what you can pick here. But for now, just know that you can add different categories from the terminal. And at the moment that you have these settings set in your project, you can then release them in the cloud by running this Amplify push. At any point, you can go back to this configuration that you use and run Amplify update with the name of the category. So this is more or less an overview of how working with Amplify CLI looks like. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about the Amplify console. And this is a way where you can set up this auto-deploy feature. So this, the way it looks is basically you connect your repo for your app. And the moment that you decide to push your commits to this repo, it will trigger this auto deploy feature. So you have a really nice control on when you are releasing a new version. If you use this with the different environments, you have total control of your overall development cycle. This, of course, this is giving you access to deploy globally. You can also choose custom domains from the console, so it's really easy. You can also choose to use different branches to run these auto deploys. And of course, these are atomic. So that means that if in any step there's an error, it will be rolled back, so it will never be deployed or interfere with your users. There's also a nice option where you can password protect these different deployments, so it's all the time secure. There's different repos that you can use, so I'm going to mention a few of them. You have GitHub, Bitbucket, GitLab, and Code Commit as different options. And if you don't use any of these repo hosting solutions, you can also use a manual deploy that usually will involve a zip file or a drag and dropping a folder. So these are a few options. More or less what I would say is that this is kind of a modern tool set to develop in the cloud. So let's look into the different categories that AWS Amplify is offering today. So we have authentication, which is called auth category. We have API with support for GraphQL and, of course, REST. There's chatbots, analytics. XR is augmented reality. And of course, the storage, access to Lambda functions, hosting, and notifications. These are some of the common pieces that you will use to create your full stack serverless apps. And there's also support for predictions, and predictions is artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I put some of them here. So these are support for translation. There's also text to speech. You can also pass an audio file and it will transcribe into text. You can also use image and video recognition and also comprehend. So there's plenty of options here for you. And I know after this, you're gonna get using to auth and API. And this is how we are gonna build the application that I'm gonna demonstrate today. Usually this is this is the reaction. I mean, this was supposed to be a small intro of AWS Amplify, and maybe I got a little bit over my head, but don't worry, it's going to be much easier than it looks here. So let's move into the actual application that I'm going to be demonstrating, and I call it Chatty. So this is a single room real-time chat application that it will be running on the cloud. And you can follow this link. It's a tutorial that you can follow step by step to build the application that I'm going to show you. So this is how it looks. Any number of users can log into this chat room and share their messages. I just make like a couple of messages here from 2 different users, myself and what I call a robot. And I also have an option to remove all the messages. So this will be another option, if it gets too messy. For the architecture of this chat room app, I'm going to be using AWS Amplify to host all of these assets in the cloud. And we are going to use Amazon Cognito for the authentication. So this will allow different users to create a user, log into the app, and start sharing messages. Probably the most interesting bit here is that we are going to use AppSync, which is a managed GraphQL API service, and that will be using Amazon DynamoDB, which is a document database that is going to be storing or acting as a data source. On top of all of this, it will be a GraphQL client, and we are going to be running different queries, to do all the CRUD operations and also to do the real time. Okay. So this is an overview of all the commands, and probably if you look into this, you will think like, okay, this is not possible. I mean, I cannot just run like 4 commands and get it all done. Well, this is what you need to add authentication, and that will create and provision all of the services that I show you in the previous slide. There's also another command to create the GraphQL API. And then just by running Amplify push, it will recreate all of these resources in your AWS account. So that's pretty much it. So it's not a lot of of maintenance workload. What I'm missing here is that, of course, there will be like some prompts that will ask you for different options, so you can customize exactly the way you want it. Okay, let's look now into our GraphQL schema. And I know that probably in the Angular community, GraphQL is not as much popular as is in the React community, but this is a really nice technology that was created by Facebook and allows you to very much access your data source and set up how the access to the data source will be done from the client. And here you can see what is called a GraphQL schema, and it looks very much like an object definition, like TypeScript definition. And there are a few differences. Before I talk about add model, let's look into the different fields. So these are the fields from my type. So we have an ID that will be assigned to this message, and the user that created the message, and also a timestamp so we can show it in a timeline. We can also see there's a how it's called exclamation point, and this will be saying which fields are mandatory. So it's not very difficult to follow. One thing that I want to point here is this add model. So this is a GraphQL directive. We call them AWS transforms, and these transforms will be creating the resolvers that will allow you to do queries, mutations, and also subscriptions for real time. Obviously, this is just an intro of GraphQL. I totally recommend you to look more into it, but we'll leave it here as we need to cover other topics. So let's look into how we are going to achieve offline storage with Amplify DataStore. So when using Amplify DataStore, what we will be creating is some models, and we are going to use the GraphQL schema to do so. And by using this simple API, which very much looks like a plain object in JavaScript, we can basically query, we can save, we can also run subscriptions, and that will allow us to store the data locally. And that will be done by the storage engine. And this storage engine is going to be using different technologies just because Amplify is supporting both web and mobile. So in web, it's going to be using IndexedDB, and in mobile, it's going to be using SQLite. So this is how it's going to be working while offline. Let's look what happens when we go online, which is another state that our client will be on. What will happen when we go online is that the sync engine will kick in and look into any pending operations that we have done locally, and it will start synchronizing them using AppSync. At this moment, we have support for different data sources. So you can see here DynamoDB, which is the one that is supported by default, but you can also have access to AWS Lambda or, for example, Elasticsearch. So there's plenty of options here. What will happen is that we are going to be using subscriptions. So that means that we are going to be using WebSockets to send the different changes through the different clients. So that's going to be pretty much instantly. So this is, I think, as far as it goes as an intro. What I want to do now is show you like some code snippets so you can see how that looks in code. And what you will realize is that it's not using GraphQL. So GraphQL is going to be created from the operations that we do on the client. And this is probably one advantage, but you don't need to be a GraphQL expert to use this API. The only thing that you need to do, though, is create your GraphQL schema that will allow you to create your models that will correspond to your types in your schema, and that will allow you to run these operations, which are, in this case, I'm showing the save, but there's also query, and there's also the subscription. As you can see, using these models is very simple. We just pass a plain JavaScript object, and we are good to go. Very good. This is another example how you query data, and in this case we are using predicates. These predicates will match DynamoDB queries, so you can do complex filters in this example, I'm using all that will just return all of the data that is stored locally. All right, so now we are good to go. This is just the application in the client. So let's make it a PWA. What do you think? Yeah, I think we are ready. Let's see how we are on time. Okay, we are quite good. So let's see, maybe I have time to do a little demo at the end. But at this point, I want to make it a PWA. So far, we have a client that is able to store the data by using the Amplify DataStore. But what we don't have is, if we do go offline, we will still get the dinosaur. So that's nothing we haven't sorted out yet. So let's make it a progressive web app that will sort that dinosaur problem. So in Angular, we have this plugin that will do most of the work for us, which is awesome. And you just need to run this command to get this process started. So this is going to make few changes. The first one is obviously Angular service worker, the configuration. Then we also have some assets that will be going with the web app manifest. We will look into these details a little bit later, but these are related to the support of the different devices and how we want to customize the user experience. We also have some changes on the configuration for the build for Angular and also the index HTML. Of course, there's also a change on the app module. I'm just going to look into that right now. And there are a few changes here. The first one is adding the manifest and also setting some initial user experience. In this case, is a theme color that we are going to use throughout our application. This is using default, so I didn't change that. The other thing that I'm going to show you is this message. So basically what happens is if we are going to use if we are going to add this service worker, which is obviously mandatory, if we don't have JavaScript enabled, we need to show some message. So that's something that we cannot go around. All right. The changes on the app module will be basically importing this service worker module, and that will point to our JavaScript file and implementation for the service worker. What we can see here is that it will only apply when we are in production. So we need to use ng build with the production flag set. Otherwise, you won't get the service worker working. Just so you know. Here, the steps to test the PWA is, as I was mentioning, running this ng build in production mode. That will create a set of new assets. So most of them will be assets as icons for these different platforms, including mobile and also desktop. And some other changes that we already mentioned, like the web app manifest and also the service worker. What I want to point here is obviously this is a tricky bit, which is this safety worker. And maybe if you have been using PWA for a while, there was an issue that was basically pointing to releasing new versions. And this issue, in some cases, depending how your service worker setup was for you, it could get into a state where you would require the user to do a manual uninstall of that service worker. Of course, if you think about a massive deployment for a PWA, it could be New York Times or it could be a big bank. This is really not the best experience. If you want to release a new version, this safety worker will allow you to change versions without having to ask the user for any interaction. So these are kind of a safety measure, so you don't fall into that trap. The way you will be doing this is you have basically two ways. One way would be to release, to deploy your PWA every time and on the cloud or in your provider. But of course, this would be too heavy. Another alternative is to test this locally. So one thing that you can use in my case, I'm using this HTTP server, and that will allow me to run this as close as possible as in my service provider, but locally. So I'm gonna use this, or at least I want to recommend you to use this, so you can make every change faster. One thing that I experience at this point is that I could get most of the assets and the app working with the default PWA plugin configuration, but there was the logo that you can see at the top that was broken. And basically what happened here is that this was not part of the assets of the app. And was pointing to an online resource. So of course, one solution will be to copy that resource and put it locally, but I want to show you how you can fix this. The way you can fix this is you can go to the Angular service worker configuration file, which is this ngsw config.json, and you will find two asset groups. So this is pointing to our index HTML. So that's the entry point for our app. And we will be defining the behavior for the different assets. So we have two groups, app and assets. So let's look into the first one. For the asset group app, we have a few settings. The first one is install mode. And we have two options. We have prefetch and lazy. So lazy is on demand and prefetch is on install. So that means that when we are installing our service worker, we are going to include these assets. So let's see the settings. We are going to import some files, and this will be installed together with our app and service worker. So we have the index.html, we have the web app manifest, and also all of the assets from our JavaScript app. So that will be the vendor file, that will be our own code, and also the CSS. What I did have to change is what is called this URLs section. So this would include any of the resources that are external to our project. As I was mentioning, you could also move this to the assets folder, but in this talk, I wanted to show you how you can fix that. This also applies to, for example, Google Fonts or any other resources that are online and external to your build. Let's look into the other group, and this is the group called assets. And this setup is pretty smart. And you can see that the install mode is on demand, which is lazy, and the update mode, when we make an update on the version of the service worker, will be prefetch. So let's look into the configuration. So that includes anything that falls into the assets, any files that we can find in the assets folder, and any of these extensions. So that will be SVG, GPG, etc. So if you are thinking now, okay, so why is this not covered in the app group? Well, the difference between these different assets is these are going to be on demand. And if you think about PWAs, they work in different devices. So let's pick one device. Imagine I'm using an Android phone. The moment I install my PWA in this Android phone, it's only going to load these assets, but only the assets for Android. I don't care about the other assets. Imagine there's assets for iOS, there's assets for Microsoft platform, there's other assets that they are not applicable to Android. So making this on demand will just load these specific resources. That means that when I do an update, on an Android device, because this was loaded on demand, now I only need to update these two files, which now I'm confident that they will work well with that device. So this is a very interesting setting that I wanted to cover with you. All right. So look at this. We are done with another section. We can relax. It's a little bit crazy, but we are ready to look into what we have achieved. And if I have time, I will do a little demo. It's a little bit risky, but we'll go for it. So let's see what we have achieved. Well, now, by doing these changes, I can run my chatty app, not only in web, but mobile and desktop. And you can see here an example of different devices. This is some screen captures. On the left, we have an Android device. On the right, we have an iOS device. So you can see how the application looked. The application still kept all of the features. So we have a single chat room with real time and also, working in the cloud and offline. The other thing that I want to review is what we have covered. And here, I want to tell you that we haven't covered everything. There's still a few things that we haven't covered, but let's see what we have done so far. So if we go offline and we hit reload, the application will survive, which is awesome. We can also store the messages safely while offline, and we are going to use IndexedDB in web. We also have this feature, which is quite tricky, that when you are going back online, imagine you have sent some messages. Well, these messages are going to be sent, and you don't have to do any interaction, at least the user, as long as you go online, behind the scenes is going to be a synchronizing process that will do that for you, which is also quite interesting. What we haven't covered is, if we are offline at this point, we don't show the user. And this is quite a critical point, because if I'm in this chat room and I'm distracted, I may go into an area with no network, and that will be maybe unrecognized for me. So what we could add is some kind of notification that lets the user know that there's some loss of network. And then, of course, the user will know and then change the behavior, but it will be in control. The way we can do that is by using what we have available in the Amplify framework. And the way we are going to use it is we will define a flag, which I call offline, and we will use that to show a message to the user and also maybe change some styles. So that will be our flag that will live in our app component, and this is how we're going to deal with it. So in ng on init, we are going to register to all of the events that the data store emits, and we are going to be looking into the network status event. And that event contains this active flag, and that will give us the information that we are after. So in this case, if we go offline, we will be able to show this message that you can see here. You are offline, your messages will be shared once you are connected. And we also changed the input, so the user is always in control of, the user can decide if he wants to write the message or not, or wait until he's online. In any case, if the user goes ahead and creates the messages while offline, we know that these messages are going to be shared when the user goes online. Okay, so let's go through an overview of what we have seen in this session. One comparison that we can do from web or single-page application versus PWA is that web will always be slower. And this is for one specific reason, is that PWAs can be pre-catch. Once you install the PWA, it will behave much, much faster because it's reading not from the network, but it's reading from the cache. The other thing that has a slightly advantage for PWA, if you need offline first, is that it can work offline. I mean, that's a big advantage. There's another difference, which is that PWAs can work with full screen, will give this appearance as if it's a full-blown native app. If you're working with iOS or Windows, it will seem like it's a full native app, besides using it in your phone. So that's also something you may want to explore. And this is very much the overview. So you can run it on the browser, mobile, and desktop, which are new platforms that are not available for only when you use the browser. The other thing is that we have a slightly advantage. We can use some native-like features which are not available for web. And this is when we are in these different operative systems. If you have a web app that is running on a desktop, that's a completely different environment that won't apply for web. So I'm going to give a slightly advantage for PWAs, and this opens the door to a lot of options. And here I just want to use this slide to show you the possibilities. Like, everything is possible. Like this crazy picture with this cat playing DJ with a pizza on the universe as the background. All right. So at this point, we are at the end, and I think I have time for a demo. So let's go for it. I prepared, let me see. I prepared this screen, and here I have like a face to face, and I have two users. This is a Firefox, and this is a Chrome instance. What I'm going to do before I do any test, I'm going to refresh just to make sure I don't have any stale connections. And I just log in with different users just to see, the messages in the different sites. So I'm going to start with myself. Right there. How are you doing? Okay. And I'm going to send a message. And you can see how it behaves. So I can see my message here. I can see the timestamp. There's also the message here for the robot that it shows in the other side. I mean, this is all good. And of course, the robot. One thing I want to do is I want to use these bot, and just to show you that these are in reality a real-time application. The other option that we showed before is this delete all. Let's imagine that we are a little bit tired. There's too much noise going on. We can also hit the delete all, and that will also remove there. Another thing that I want to do is show how this is going to work for offline. So let's go offline very quickly. I can do this using the network. So I'm going to go offline, and we can see that the user interface have changed. I'm gonna send a message. Hi, robot. I am offline. And let's see how that behaves. Well, now we can see that there's no interaction here. I'm gonna write a message. Let's use like a sequence, because it's time bound. So this is 3. One thing that you will be seeing now is, let's make this quickly bigger. One thing that I want you to see is how the sync engine is going to create these messages using GraphQL. So we are going to look into that next. But if I go online, we will see how the GraphQL requests are being handled. here. We can also see that all of the messages that I wrote, they are in the right sequence. I mean, this is also because we are using the same timeline. So we can see that it has synchronized even when the messages were, I mean, if you think about it, I was writing message offline and online, and they all come together as expected. Let's look into the magic that happened here with GraphQL. So here, what we can see is that there was a synchronization, which is using this query, sync chatties, and this has done the request. And it has come back with all the new items that were created. And if we look maybe here, we can see all of the messages. And some interesting bits is that it's using a version number. There's also some private fields here. This is the synchronization. So that's how it happened. The good thing is that we didn't have to write any of this GraphQL. One other thing that I want to show you, maybe now I can close this. One thing that I want to show you is the setup for PWA. So one thing that I can see is the web app manifest, and this is the configuration for user experience. So I can see the color. I can also see what's the display mode, which is set as standalone. There's also some icons, and this will give me like some idea of how I want to present my app. The other thing I want to show you is the service worker. It seems like it didn't show correctly. Let's see if I do a refresh. All right. Okay, we're having a hiccup. Let me see if I can use the deployed version, which should be also synchronized. And let's look here at the service worker. Okay. What is going on? Sorry, it seems it's not showing. Let's try to reload. All right. Okay, I cannot see the service worker somehow. Let's see if it works. I mean, we have seen that it works. Yeah, it works offline. No, actually, it's not working. Okay, sorry. Sorry, of course the demo is not going to work. I mean, come on. All right, well, let's see another bit. Probably it won't be catching now. Weird. Okay. All right. Well, the demo is not working for the service worker. Sorry about that. And yeah, let me just go through the final slides. So, I mean, if you want to give it a try, I don't know what's going on. This was working, obviously, and what you can do is, if you want to try it, you can go and use this repo, and that will give you the code that I show you for this solution. And if you want to go ahead and follow a step-by-step workshop, you can also follow this repo. It will give you all of the instructions to get what I show you. Okay, that's all. Sorry for the demo. Maybe that was a stretch, but yeah, that's the end. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Gerard. That was no, not Gerard. Gerard. Gerard.
Oh, I know it's
something like that.
impossible. It's
I
impossible.
get there. It's very embarrassing that English people can never pronounce other people's names, and I'm the worst for it. So I do apologize.
No
That was
worries.
an
No
excellent
worries.
tour. I really enjoyed it, and
Okay, thanks.
I just loved your voice is so calming. Like even when things didn't work, it's just like I'm just feeling so calm by listening to you. It made me very happy, and I really loved the cat pictures as well.
Yes.
I wondered if you
These are
made those yourself.
popular. I wish. No.
They're not your cat.
No, only the picture. I have a picture with a cat that it's for real, but the other ones are just like crazy creations.
So we've had a few questions while you were talking. So maybe we can bring a few of them up. I think
Sure.
Josh is in charge of these. But while he brings one up, one of the things that definitely I was interested in was the name Amplify.
Yes.
Is it related in any way to the AMP project? You know, the AMP project.
Oh no, I don't believe it has any relation. I think the Amplify is more to add features in the sense of on front end. It's always looking at front end. It was originally a mobile project, then it added the web bit, and I think the idea is to add the cloud bit. Actually, I mean that's the main. When you are thinking Amplify, actually you are thinking of adding the cloud factor.
Right.
That's the.
Well, that brings us on to one of the questions that was asked by David Somerville, who said, "Is Amplify the AWS version of Firebase?"
Of course, yes. I think that's a good way of looking at it. I think, of course, these are two different technologies, and I think Firebase has been around for longer. AWS Amplify, it's 2 years old, I think, around 2 years old. So when you look into these different options, I mean, you need to think also that there's also differences between the services, but I think they have a match on features. I mean, they try to solve the same thing, which is this full stack serverless, like how to get to that whole experience from front end to back end, which doesn't require you to be like a cloud expert in a way.
Right. So similarly, in Firebase, they the actual data store is a NoSQL document database. And I noticed that that when you're offline, it's Amplify's using IndexedDB or a SQLite. Is the actual real database basically a NoSQL database? Just happens to be using a SQL-based storage mechanism.
Actually, yeah, it's a NoSQL data source, which is the Amazon DynamoDB, but because it's abstracted, I'm not sure there's there's not a one-to-one. So, and also because it's kind of magical, because the GraphQL bit makes it completely abstract. If you look at the GraphQL part of the equation, GraphQL allows you to implement your resolvers in any way. So it could be another data source you will never know, because on the client you only see the models. I mean, the only thing that connects the client with the backend is this like abstraction of the GraphQL schema, which just tells you, it's kind of a graph. So it's a new way of looking at data, because you don't have this like one-to-many or one-to-one. It's you can only see that on the schema, but it's kind of a generalization. So that allows you to connect to NoSQL, or maybe also a relational database, or maybe the file system, or could be anything really.
So the front end aspect of this can be used without any use of AWS at all. You could be using a completely different backend.
You need the GraphQL schema, And then you will have at some point, I mean, if you want to use it in the same way, you will have to implement GraphQL to your data source.
Right.
If you want to remove the AWS side of things, because you are using GraphQL, it's up to you how you do that. Of course, there's also the synchronization bit that, I mean, you will have to do a little bit more work, but it's possible.
So talking about synchronization, Josh has brought up another question I had, which was, I noticed that you said that it was using AppSync to do the actual syncing. Is that part of Amplify, or is that a different, sort of more generic tool? I haven't heard of it.
Oh yeah, this is a service on itself. So this is a GraphQL API managed service. So basically, the way it works individually is that you give it a GraphQL schema, and you can create all of the resolvers and also the data source. And then the data source could be HTTP endpoint. It could be Elasticsearch. It lives on the backend, but Amplify makes use of it. And it's really how Amplify works. So it kind of lives on the client side, but then it gives you like a sensible setup, like a template. Actually, it uses CloudFormation templates. So it's kind of a scaffolding of diverse AWS services as pieces, and then using these YAML files, which preset or predefined. These are linked to Amplify CLI commands, which are these categories. And then from that command, it just scaffolds a whole architecture, and then you interact with it. But actually, it's kind of a director. The Amplify is like a director, like, okay, you do this, you do that, you do it this way. And then, of course, the cloud services are just there. Like, okay, we are still working as we are independently, but because the Amplify is the director, it can make them do different things like the synchronization, etc. So Amplify can also add features to the AWS services that they are not really used in that way, because they are part of an architecture. So the architecture could be to provide, I don't know, live streaming, or it could be, you can build anything with those pieces. But you can, of course, AppSync is to build GraphQL APIs. But in this case, it's used to synchronize. So you need the client as well. So then you need to set up like an architecture that will use AppSync in a certain way. I'm not sure if I could explain it, but it's more or less like that.
Yeah, I get the feeling. Like, I get the understanding. It's bringing lots of pieces together and orchestrating them. It's really good.
Yes, that's it.
So a question from Rick Adams, which was, is there a good reason to move to this from Firebase? Like, if you're talking about them as being in the same kind of area, what would be the advantages of using this rather than, say, using the various Firebase tools, do you think?
This is as always, this is a tricky question when you are, comparing different tools, or you need to. I think when you are looking into this kind of approach, you want to be sure of what you need. No, it's like a shopping list. No, so you want to make sure that you know what you need. So I would say, like, what are you worried about? You are worried about, real time. You are worried about, what is that you want to achieve? And then, of course, when you have this, set of requirements or features that you can think today will be important, then you need to look at, Amplify and say, how is Amplify helping achieve this? And then it's difficult to say, use this tool. I think you can use any tool to build, but you need to find the right tool that is a good fit. So it's not something I can answer generic, like in general. I would say that you need to go and look at it like what is that you need and how this or that can help you achieve that. How is your team? What your team knows. I mean, there are different things to consider, but I would say that these are good technologies on its own, and they can face they can face any challenges, but you need to just look into the details. So I cannot give you that answer right now.
Yeah, I guess that it also depends on what you're already invested in. If you're already using a lot of Google infrastructure, then maybe you would stick with Firebase.
Yeah.
But I do like the
course.
idea that GraphQL gives you that abstraction layer where you can then split out to different data sources as well.
Yeah, and a lot of things that are possible are thanks to GraphQL, because of the schema. Basically, once you have access to the schema, you can generate code, you can create models, you can create interfaces, you can also orchestrate things, because you can rely on how they will behave. And GraphQL kind of sets this framework, and a lot of the tooling around GraphQL is because of the way GraphQL is built. And it's only an abstraction, actually. When you look into it, it's just, you have a query language that it's just slicing. It's kind of slicing the instructions of how you access data, but it just gives you a function, which is anything. Which are the resolvers. So the resolvers could be looking into the file system, looking into memory, looking into a document DB, looking into an HTTP request. I mean, it's just very, it's very flexible. So I don't know. I mean, it's just something to look into and see if you can use it.
Cool. There's quite a few other questions, but I think maybe what might be a good idea is for us to wrap up here and head over to our Zoom, and then we can have some more detailed conversations about some of the other questions that people have got. So if you're watching on the live stream right now, you can see the Zoom codes below, but they're also posted in the chat on both Facebook and YouTube. So do feel free to pop in and have a chat with Gerard.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he'll be able to answer any more questions that we have. But once again, thank you so much for this talk today. It was really, really interesting. I've not really spent any time with Amplify yet, and I'm definitely going to go and check it out. So
cool.
Great, thank you.
My pleasure.
And we'll see you in the Zoom.
Yeah, catch you in a minute.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.